You guys want to see something really cool? Check this out. I made a ceiling rail for my mic so I can stop moving it around all the time. Actually, I can move it around all I want now to all the different positions. That's my settee and where I sit and do my illo stuff. And at the drawing table, it's going to be awesome. And I don't have to like change mounts. Before I had to like unscrew it and stuff like that. So yeah, pretty cool. Kind of excited. I don't know why I'm doing this. My eyebrows. But I am for some reason. Alright, so we're going to try this one last time. I've got these headphones with a microphone on them. And the next video that I make, I will actually have all the equipment that I need to have good sound again. My poor little Mac Mini 2012 just cannot handle the 4K video that I shoot on my iPad Pro. And so since this is an art channel, I figured the visuals are important. So anyway, I have figured out though the rig that you saw me do from that mic, which is a super sweet mic. I should be able to get good sound out of that once I get this right cord. And so I have like stereo cables and I have mono cables, but there's a tri-band, TRRS. So I've got TS, TRS, but I do not have a TRRS. And it just means there's 3 black stripes on it, and I guess that makes the iPad pick it up as a mic. So that's annoying. Anyway, so yeah, so I'll be able to do that next time. This time I'm going to try it on this dealio right here. And so the sound won't be great, but it'll be better than nothing. So anyway, hopefully there's that. But I wanted to talk about, while you're watching me draw, I finished this page, and so that's kind of fun. But I wanted to talk about something that is a practice that I go through when I'm trying to decide whether or not I should do something. Especially if I am a little scared of that thing, or if it's one of those things that I'm like, I want to do, but I'm worried or anxious or whatever. I ask myself, what is the worst thing that could happen, right? And so it's a risk assessment is what it really is. And sometimes that risk assessment is, well, the worst thing that could happen is, you know, like you die, or worse than that, you don't quite die, but you're paralyzed and burned and quadriplegic, or I don't know, you know, I mean, you could just go on and on and on. But most of the time, the things that we fear are actually not going to cause us bodily harm. They're not going to make us lose our job. They're not going to do whatever. We fear kind of social shame, or we fear, you know, what someone might consider to be embarrassing or whatever. And in all reality, those type of things they're not dangerous, and so if it's something that's good, you should do it. For example, one of the things that I think that we should all do is have personal projects, and those personal projects should be something that we care about. They should be something that are helping us improve and get better, and they should also be something that we share publicly. And that sharing publicly thing is really important for a number of reasons, but one of those reasons is that if we're not sharing it publicly, then we don't have that risk. And without that risk, we have the possibility of just kind of phoning it in, or just being like, this is just for me, so I don't need to like push, you know, the quality or work, or, you know, like I can just kind of do this whenever. There's a level of accountability, and then there's a level of just being able to, you know that people are going to look at it, and that the idea of extra eyes on it, or extra ears on it, or whatever your project is, can help push you. So there's that. And then this kind of was spurred from, I was in a talk recently or I was in a meeting recently where there's a Harvard Business School professor that was pitching his model on how to evaluate companies. And so when you're looking at startups, there's kind of an evaluation process. And he actually said something pretty interesting. The evaluation process that he uses is that he tries to evaluate it in such a way that he can mitigate the risk, right? And so if there's a risk of failure, or if there's a risk where a problem could happen, or there's a risk of financial loss, or there's, whatever the risk is, that lowers the value of that venture, right? That lowers the value, because the higher the risk, the more possibility that you have of losing your investment, losing your money, and whatever. And so he has this formula where it's a pretty easy thing, and he would go in and he would coach startups to say, if you have this risk, if you want to increase your value, if you want to increase your ability to, get angel investors or venture capitalists or whatever, all you have to do is you have to go in and identify the most risky part of your venture and then eliminate that risk. And so I thought that was a really interesting way to increase the quality of a project, is to say, well, what's the riskiest thing? What's the thing that's most likely to make this thing fail, or most likely to make this thing not be completed? And then once you identify that, you figure out a plan to eliminate that, and that actually increases the value of your project. So, for example, I'm working on the Tongue-Cut Sparrow fairy tale right now. The riskiest thing that will get in the way of it not being completed right now is that I don't work on it. That there are other things that get in the way, or there are other things that cause me to not spend as much time on it as I could, or whatever. And so to eliminate that, I've come up with my 6 and 3, which is in any 3-day period, I will put in a minimum of 6 hours. And so that's 2 hours a day, 3 days in a row. Or if I want to take a day off, that's 2 3-hour days, or if I've got a big block of time, I can bust out 6, or you can go 4 and 2 or whatever. But it gives me the ability to relax and hang out with people and play video games, while keeping me on track to where in any given week I put in more than 12 hours of work on my project. And so I really like things like that, and that's worked out really well for me, and I've been testing that out for the last couple months, and I really like the 6 and 3, just because that's what seems to work for me. Is if I can put in 12 to 20 hours a week on my project, then I tend to get a ton more done than trying to chunk it in little chunks. Like the 100 days of animation I did. I loved that. That was great. I really enjoyed the 100 days of animation, but I found that every single day by day, once I got into the 80s, I was massively burnt out. And I started doing 30 minutes rather than getting in a couple hours of work. And doing that 30 minutes was problematic because it takes me 10 to 20 minutes just to warm up and get my feet wet and get kind of going on things and stuff like that. And so if I can take that 10 to 20 minutes and use that momentum and carry it into a 2-hour session or a 4-hour session, then that's great. And so for me, that's the thing. So that's one example. One of the biggest problems that we have is that we have all these ideas, but we never execute the ideas because we don't have the time, or we don't take the time, or other things take precedent. That's kind of one of the biggest problems. And so just something to think about as you're going through your projects in your day is what are the biggest risks to the success of your project? What are the biggest risks to the completion of your project? And then do everything you can to eliminate that and move on to the next one. So, for example, the next biggest risk that I have in my project right now is that my computer is super old, and I don't have like a couple grand lying around to where I could, just buy a new system or whatever. I mean, obviously I've been using the same computer for, I don't know, whatever it is now, 5 years or something. And so what I'm doing to eliminate that risk is going to take a little bit of time, but I'm putting a little bit of money away every month. I'm trying to get some freelance work and things like that so that I can upgrade my system. And then I'll move on to the next thing. And if you continue to assess risk factors and eliminate those risk factors, then it'll increase the value of your project and it increases your success rate. And so that's just kind of a cool thing. But then back to the original topic, which is what's the worst thing that could happen? Well, that's something that I use to take people through things. Like if a student comes into my office and they don't know what to do, and they're like, oh, I'm freaking out or whatever, there's this opportunity, or whatever. And I say, well, what's the worst thing that can happen? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I'm like, well, worst case scenario. What is like the absolute worst case scenario if you go down that path? I don't know. I spend a couple months working on that, and then it doesn't pan out, and and I say, yeah, the worst case scenario is maybe you have to retake a class, maybe you're here an extra semester or something, but like in the long run, years down the road, that's not going to matter. Whether you're here an extra 4 months or whether you had to retake a class because you bombed it or whatever, like that's not a big deal. You're not going to lose an arm. You're not going to, you're not going to lose your ability to feed yourself or pay rent or whatever. And so sometimes realizing that the riskiest thing, the worst case scenario in a situation, is actually not that big of a deal, is pretty encouraging. Because there are times where you don't even have to eliminate anything. You just realize that, oh yeah, the worst case scenario is X. Like, there are people that are paralyzed by indecision, right? Like, where do you want to eat? Oh, I don't know. I don't like to decide. Don't ask me. Like, well, what's the worst case thing? Like, you spend a couple bucks on a restaurant that you don't like and you have a bad meal. Like, that's literally not the end of the world. And so looking at situations in that way, you can make clear decisions quicker. If you assess the risk in an accurate way and find that that it's not that big of a deal. The other thing that kind of ties into this is an economic principle called opportunity cost. And I do actually think opportunity cost is significantly important to understand. The rule of opportunity cost, as I understand it, basically means that the cost of something is the next most valuable thing that you would have done had you not done this thing. So, for example, if I've got 3 projects A, B, and C, and I choose to work on project A, and the next most valuable project is project B, the cost of project A is project B, right? And so I can look at this and I can say that because I chose to do A, I wasn't able to do B. That's the cost of that project. That's what that project cost me. And so sometimes that's really important to look at, like, what is the cost of the choices that you're making? What is the cost of playing video games? Well, the cost of playing video games is the next most valuable thing that you didn't do, right? And so sometimes we make irrational and illogical decisions, and I don't believe that we always weigh out the options. I think a lot of economists have a theory where consumers are always putting an economic or mathematical value, and they're weighing the scales, and they're saying, well, what I spend my money on or what I spend my time doing is the most valuable thing because I've logically deducted that that is the case. And I don't think that's what people do. I think people make emotional decisions and they don't think things through. We should think things through, but I don't think we do think things through. Because if you really did, you'd say, I like watching TV and the value of entertainment is high. Yet, watching, 30 hours of TV in a week or spending 5 hours on my phone a day, that is an opportunity cost that is fairly high, because think of all of the things that I could have done if I cut that down to, maybe 1 or 2 shows a night before I get working or while I'm working or whatever. that significantly lowers the cost of that activity. And so I just think thinking of those three things is kind of helpful when you're working on side projects and doing that type of stuff. So the first one is, what's the worst case scenario, right? If you do this thing and it doesn't work out and it goes totally to crap and just blows up in your face, worst case scenario. And if that's not that bad, and you still want to do that thing, you should do that thing, right? The second thing is identifying and eliminating major risk factors to the success of your project. And each time you identify the most risky thing and eliminate that risk, then it increases the value of your project and it increases the potential success rate of your project. And then the third thing is opportunity cost. To remember that every action that you take, every dime that you spend, every minute that you spend is actually at the cost of the next thing that you didn't do or next thing that you didn't buy, right? And so if I have $1 and I spend that $1 on a candy bar rather than spending that $1 on, I don't know, something else that costs $1. $1 was a bad sum. The cost of that candy bar is the thing that I didn't buy, right, with that $1. And so with limited resources, you spend those resources accordingly. Anyway, so there's a more analytical look at passion projects and spending your time and doing all that kind of jazz. And having said that, I hope you enjoyed watching me draw this thing. I have started a page. I've been asked by Amazon, which I'm sure isn't a big deal, to be an Amazon influencer. And so you can go to my page at amazon.com/shop/Cory Kerr, link in the description of this video. And you'll see curated products that I will continue to update. I don't think I'm going to put books on there right now, but I might. But I've got a lot of the equipment that I use, the pens, the mics, the brush pens, the paper, and a lot of that stuff that you see me use in this. And so if you're interested in any of that and you like what I'm doing and you're going to buy stuff anyway, you can buy it there and it will actually give me a little bit of a kickback and it won't cost you anything extra, which is kind of cool. So you can also sign up for an Audible account. If you go through, you get a free audiobook if you're interested. I'm listening to a Brandon Sanderson book right now. It's the third in the Stormbringer, or Stormfather, I can't remember what it's called. Stormlight series. Anyway, so good, but so long. Anyway, if you want a free book, you can click on the link in the description of this video, and they give me a kickback if you sign up for a free thing. And if you just want to look at my stuff, you can always go to kuretake.com. And I've got t-shirts and other things and whatnot there. And, I'm constantly adding to that. And if you don't want to spend any money, which is totally fine, and you like this video, let me know what you think of some of the concepts and things that I'm talking about. And leave me a comment in the comment section. Consider sharing it on social media or whatever. Or if you haven't followed me on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and other places, then those links are in the description as well. So I will talk to you guys later, next time with better sound. Same bat channel, same bat time. That's an old joke. Does that even... I wasn't even alive when that was on. I must have been watching reruns. Anyway, that's all I've got. I'll catch you guys later. I'm out.